In our previous lesson, we were discussing about quadratic equations. We were able to use factorization method, completing squares, and today we are going to learn about the formula method. But before we go to formula method, I have some examples on completing squares so that we'll be able to do maybe at least 2 examples of completing squares, and then we'll be able to go to quadratic equation. But all of them we are under quadratic equation. Let's take an example of the first one. This is example 1. Example 1, you are given x squared minus 3x minus 2 should be equal to 0. And I said in completing squares, you are not going to equate to 0. We'll be able to spread this value to this other side. Because it was negative, we'll be able to get the value which is positive. And then we have x squared minus 3x should be equal to 2. And then the next step is we divide the coefficient of x by 2 and then we square. After squaring that value, you add in both sides. You add in the first side and this other side. That means we'll have x squared minus 3x plus that value, the coefficient of x. Coefficient of x now is 3. That is now the coefficient of x. You say 3, you divide by 2 and then you square. And then you add in both sides. 3 over 2 squared and this other side 3 over 2 squared. And then after squaring, if you square you get 9, you square 3, 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4, which is 9 over 4. And then you add in both sides. And then from there, this is a fraction, this is a fraction. We need a quadratic equation. That means you are going to multiply all through by 4. If you multiply by 4, if you multiply this side by 4, you multiply by 4, you multiply by 4. You multiply this other side by 4, you multiply by 4. 4 and 4 you will cancel. This one is 4 and the other 4 will cancel. X squared times 4. That means you are having 4x squared. 4, this one is 4. You multiply by 3. 4 times 3 is 12x. 4 you remain with 9 is equal to 8 plus 9. 8 plus 9 is 17. And then the first equation we are able to get them in quadratic function, which is 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. We go back to factorization method so that we'll be able to get the value of x. And the value of x should be equal to, we are going to get two values of x. Using the formula or the method that we are able to use in factorization method, if you sum, we are supposed to get the value of the coefficient of x, which is negative 12. Which value are we going to get? If we add, if we sum, you get 12. If you multiply, what are we going to multiply? Which is 4 times 9. If you multiply 4 times 9, positive, which is 36. The value, if you multiply, you get 36. If you add, you get negative 12. We have negative 6 minus 6. Negative and negative, you say negative 6 minus 6, which is negative 12. Which is, we are able to get the coefficient of x. If you multiply negative 6 times negative 6, you get 36, which is positive. So if you multiply these two, you should be able to get 36. If you add these two, you should be able to get negative 12. Using factorization method, we are able to remember the first value will remain the same and the last value. What you are going to change is only the value, the coefficient of x. That means you are going to say 4x squared minus 6x minus 6x plus 9. That means the last and the first will remain. Negative 6 minus 6, which is negative 12, we'll be able to go back to negative 12. And then from there, because now we have the quadratic equation, should be equal to 17. In factorization, we are equating to 0. But in completing squares, we are going to equate to the value that we have. The next section is, we want to factorize the first two and the last two. So if you factor 2x, if you multiply 2 times, you get 6x. That's why we are able to say 2x into bracket 2x. If you multiply these two, you get 4x. 2x times 3, you get negative 6. And then this other section, you have negative 6x plus 9. Which value or a number is common? If you multiply here by, if you divide by 3, it gets 2. If you multiply by 3, you get 3, which is negative 3. If you multiply this and this, you get negative 6x. If you multiply negative 3 times negative 3, you get positive 9. And you have to remember we are equating to the value we are supposed to equate to 17. Then from there, 2x minus 2x, which is this one. But the values which are inside the bracket are the same. 2x minus 3, 2x minus 3. Because they are the same, we group them into one bracket whereby we are going to have 2x minus 3. And then this one 2x minus 3. We have this one, we have the first one and the second one. And because the value are the same, 2x minus 3, 2x minus 3, we can combine them and then we square. The next part is 2x minus 3 squared. If you square it is similar by saying 2x minus 3 multiplied by 2x minus 3, which is still the same as 2x minus 3, and then you put them in brackets and then you square. Is equal to 17. We are going to equate to 17. Because both are the same, we are squaring to get to 17. But when we are calculating this, we want to get the value of x. So what will be the next step that we are going to do? We get the square root. If you get the square root over square, it is going to cancel itself. So that if you say square root at this part, you'll be able to cancel this, and then you get the square root in this other section. So you'll be able to get 2x minus 3 should be equal to square root of 17. Then from there, because you get the square root of 17, which is 2x minus 3 will be square root of 17. If this 3 crosses over to this other side, you're going to get 2x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 17. As you can remember how we were calculating the substitution method, we are able to substitute one value. In our case, we have x. We want to make x the subject of the formula. That's why we have only 2x should be equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 17. Square root of 17 is 4.12. So it is 3 plus or minus 4.12. But you have to remember the value of x, we still have the coefficient of x, but we need only the value of x. So because this one is plus, we are going to say 3 plus 4.12, that is 7.12. 2x at the same time is 3 minus 4.12, which is 3 minus 4.12, you get negative 1.12. But you have to remember the value of x, we still have the coefficient, We divide by 2. 2x is equal to 7. This one is now 7.12. We divide by 2, you get 3.56. And then this other section, we have 2x is equal to negative 1.12. You divide by 2, you get the value of x. That means the value of x will now be 3.56, and the other value will be negative 0.56. Those are now the two values of x, the first and the second one. And we are done with the completing squares. I'm able to send some examples in the platform. We'll be able to calculate those examples. We have several examples on completing squares. In case of any challenge, you just let me know. Then we go to the next step in the quadratic equation, whereby we are going to use the formula. When you talk of the formula, you are given a formula that will be able to solve the equation, or will be able to solve the value of x. In our case, in formula method, we have negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac will divide by 2a. So if you are given a quadratic equation, like the first one, you are given x squared minus 3x minus 2 should be equal to 0. Using the formula method, the first one is a, b, c. Because in the formula we have a, we have b and c. We have only the letters of a, b, and c. So we are going to group the first equation being a, followed by b, followed by c. Let's use the formula and then we calculate the first quadratic equation, and then we'll be able to get the value of x. From there, we have the formula being negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Let's replace negative b. B is negative 3. So you say negative b, which is negative b. What is the value of b? Which is negative 3. Plus or minus the square root of b squared. The value of b is negative 3. You say negative 3 squared minus 4. A is equal to 1. B is equal to negative 2. Which is b squared, which is negative 3 squared minus 4. AC. Negative and negative becomes positive, which is positive 3. Plus or minus